all of us there in the NEC have our smallanyana skeletons, and we don't want to take out all skeletons out, because there will be, or hell will break loose.
And that, of course, former Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini, and she could soon face criminal charges related to the outcomes of the Constitutional Court with regard to her role in a South African Social Security Agency SASSA'S grant debacle. Now, in September, the Constitutional Court ruled that Dlamini did not act in good faith and that her conduct was reckless and grossly negligent. The court ordered Dlamini to personally pay 20% of the legal costs incurred in the social grants crisis. And in addition to that, the judgment also ordered that the National Prosecuting Authority, or the NPA, determine whether Dlamini should be charged with perjury or lying under oath. And joining us now is Prince Mokotedi, who is head of the Gauteng section of the Priority Crime Investigation Unit, better known as the Hawks. Thanks so much for coming through.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you and to the viewers.
Now, let's start here. As we understand, the Hawks had a meeting with the NPA about 2 weeks ago. Is that correct, first and foremost? And was there anything with relation to Bathabile Dlamini discussed there, and how far is that?
No, absolutely. We did have a meeting with the prosecutors in relation to this particular matter. We agreed with the prosecution service that they would then do the assessment of the issues before we can, as the DPCI, conduct an investigation.
So where does that case stand now?
Where it stands now is that the prosecutors, through our assistance, of course, they would then have to get all the material evidence, assess that. For instance, they've requested us to get the transcripts of the various court judgments, the various affidavits and so on, that we can then put before them for them to do an assessment. Only then would then decide, they will then decide as to whether the matter needs to be investigated or not.
So the murmurs about Bathabile Dlamini and the fact that she could possibly be facing these criminal charges soon, whatever that means, how true is that? And when we say soon, how imminent would that be?
It's still far-fetched for now, because the National Prosecuting Authority must still make that kind of an assessment. And only after making the assessment would then they say to us that conduct this investigation, and then we'll take it up from there.
So let's talk about that, you know, the NPA having to make that decision. But the Hawks, as far as the Hawks are concerned, are there reasonable grounds here in terms of your investigation for a criminal prosecution? We
will be putting the cart before the horse. They need to do the assessment first. From our side, the investigation was initiated or was sparked by the DA opening up a case in Hillbrow. So we look at that particular matter, but then the prosecution said, no, you can't do that, because there is a directive from the Constitutional Court that we, as the prosecuting authority, need to do an assessment. So the prosecution was basically saying that we are jumping the gun. So we had to, for lack of a better word, stall the investigation.
But as far as the Hawks are concerned, what you have placed as a result of that case being open against Bathabile Dlamini by the DA, the evidence that you presented to the NPA, are you satisfied that there should be, or that you do have enough grounds on that basis for a criminal prosecution?
We still had to do the investigation. We were still in the process of doing the investigation. And I guess we would have gone through the same process as the NPA was directed by the Constitutional Court. So we're still at that, in that process. Had there been no directive from the Constitutional Court, I guess we would have continued to do the investigation. At this stage, one cannot really say whether there is sufficient evidence or not.
So is that how things generally work? If a court issues an order, regardless of the fact that somebody has already opened a case, laid a charge against someone, the one falls away and the one from the court, that order takes precedence. Is that how it generally works?
Look, this is quite a unique situation. It's quite a unique situation in the sense that the Constitutional Court gave a directive to say that NPA must investigate. And in that sense, then we will be jumping the gun if we go ahead and do that kind of investigation. Because, you see, the NPA may, at the end of the investigation, say that there is no evidence, you know, and we would have gone the other way. So I guess it's...
But the NPA is not concerned with the evidence per se, are they? Isn't that your jurisdiction as the Hawks? Isn't the NPA's job to actually determine whether she should be charged based on the evidence that you put before them?
You see, normally that would be the process, but there is no evidence before them. So the reason behind an assessment is for them, and I would guess under, you know, balance of probabilities, determine whether there is prima facie case for an investigation. So we're still at that stage as the DPCI.
Now, you know, the public, and we hear this often from opposition politicians as well, that institutions like the Hawks have been eroded as a result of political interference. With regard to high-profile political cases, which ones are you currently working on?
I can't comment on that one. It is not in my space to comment on those kind of things. But I
Why
can
not?
just say, I can just say, you see, because we have to, we can only disclose information once, you know, the investigations have been completed and so on. So we are really tied up by the legal processes.
Okay, how many cases are you working on that involve high-profile politicians?
The law and policy bars us really from looking at any case as a political case. What the law, actually the Farlam Commission of Inquiry stated very clearly that as the police officials, we should not unnecessarily consider or bring into consideration, bring forth political consideration in our investigation. So
And I'm not asking you to do that. What I'm simply saying is some people are better known than others, and that would evidently, you know, propel them to higher profile status in the public domain. It's a perception. And I'm simply asking, of people who are very well known, how many of those are you investigating at the moment?
In general terms, we are looking at a number of cases in that space.
Give us a sense. How many? 2, 5, 20?
Sakina, I'm sitting with 5,200 dockets as Gauteng DPCI. And of course, we do have a number of cases where high-profile people, so-called high-profile people in Gauteng are being investigated, whether politicians, whether...
How many politicians are you investigating at the moment?
I wouldn't want to put a figure on that, Sakina.
But why not?
I really wouldn't want to put a figure on...
As you can see, I've tried, you know, many approaches to get to this answer, and I'm not quite sure why you feel that you should not be disclosing this information to the public. I'm not asking you for the details regarding these cases. I'm simply asking you, how many politicians are you investigating at the moment?
Politicians, Sakina, would mean members of parliament, would mean
yes,
MPLs,
absolutely.
it would mean members of councillors,
mayors.
it would mean mayors.
Yes, we understand what politicians mean.
And the cases that they bring, you know, towards us. And I would also imagine that it would include public officials in that sense. We do have a what shall I call it? We refer to it as priority cases, and of course we do have a number of such cases. To put a figure on it, I'm not able to, Sakina, but we are investigating people that would say they are politicians or senior public officials. And
are we likely to see any of those cases coming to court anytime soon?
Absolutely, absolutely. We're doing our best to fast track the cases that we're working on, and those that are project related, we do work with other state departments, such as, you know, NPA. We're working with the financial FIC and so on. So they are well considered, if I could say that.
So as things stand right now, with the public perception very, very low of the Hawks and the work that they do, as I'd indicated earlier, as a result of the perception of political interference and the erosion of the institution, how do you allay the public's fears right now that you actually are, as an institution, up to the task?
We are up to the task. We're working very hard. We do engage with other law enforcement agencies in our investigations. There are check and balances in our systems, so the public can really be comforted to saying that we are really putting our effort in doing these investigations.
But we've had that those checks and balances, and still the perception has actually worsened about the institution overall.
Look, we have managed to deal with priority violent crimes, the cash in transit. We're able to deal with those ones. We're dealing now successfully with high-profile commercial crimes. It is just that the public is expecting of
Which
us.
high-profile commercial crimes will be coming to court soon?
Well, we're dealing with the matters relating to matters that have been reported by ESCOM. We're dealing now with the matters that have been reported by SAA. We're dealing with the matters that are reported by Transnet. Actually, just yesterday, we're engaging with Transnet on certain matters that they are reporting to us. So we are really working on those kind of issues.
What about cases like Steinhoff, for example? Is the Hawks at all involved in that? Is there anything that you are investigating in that regard?
That's something that's being dealt with at in our head office. It's not a provincial matter.
So, but are you aware of the fact that it is being investigated? Because you're speaking about some of these others, and you know, I would imagine that you would know about Steinhoff as well.
Yes, hence I'm saying that matter specifically is being dealt with at head office.
But it is being dealt with.
Yeah, by the Serious Economic Offences Unit at head office. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's going to be quite a long day and a long, period ahead for you, because, as I said, we're hoping you'll come back and share with us at the point where you are able to exactly where you are with regard to some of these matters, because I think it's important that you regain that public trust. The trust deficit between you and the public right now is quite huge. So again, I'll give you the final word just to tell the public out there that you actually are doing your job and that we can trust you.
We are doing our job. We're trying our best. We are in the process of filling the vacant positions. We're hoping that we'll attract the best of the best to fill in those positions. We are interacting with as I said earlier on, with other government departments, and I think there is relatively good success from our side as the DPCI. And I want to encourage the public that if there's any matter that they are not happy with or satisfied with regarding any of our investigations, they are more than welcome to approach us, and we'll deal with that particular matter.
Final question. Your successes, you say you've had some. Give us a few that you've had of late.
We have arrested the most wanted person in relation to the CITs. We have done serious crackdowns around drugs. People who have been dealing with drugs sooner or later will be pouncing on drug dealers, or for lack of a better word, high-profile drug dealers in this province. So we're making quite good inroads in dealing with organized crime.
But no so-called high-profile politicians in the mix.
We'll hear about that soon.
Well, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much to Prince Mokotedi, who is head of the Hawks in Gauteng, for talking to us about the possibility of prosecuting Bathabile Dlamini, and as he says, perhaps not in the near future. It is 7 o'clock now. Time for